I'm a great believer in the benefit of learning to speak your beloved's language. If you can do it well, it can be the bedrock of a solid and satisfying relationship that has the best chance of going the distance. In his book, The 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman, or Dr. Gary Chapman as I should say, he's laid out a brilliant map that can give you real insight into the different love languages we speak. So in today's episode, I'll walk you through those 5 love languages and explore how speaking your partner's love language can increase your sense of connection. Also, I'll share why I believe there are more than 5 love languages and cover some of the issues that can come up when you're presented with a map like this. So stay with me and let's get into it. Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. If you're looking to improve your life, to heal, to grow, and mature as an individual, but maybe you found that some of the personal development and consciousness stuff has given you the impression that you need to be super serious and vigilant to get anywhere meaningful, or feeling like maybe you're just not up to snuff, well, this show is here to remind you of your humanity, and in fact that's where your true joy and brilliance lies. With over 25 years of experience in the transformation biz and having developed NPA, one of the world's simplest, pressure-free approaches to growth and well-being, if I do say so myself, I'll be sharing tips, steps, and insights that'll help you navigate all the aspects of life as a growth-seeking being. On this show, it comes to you with a good dose of humour, maybe a smattering of colourful language, a reminder not to take things so personally, and most importantly, to be kind to yourself along the way. Make sure you hit that follow button, and let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. I'm delighted that you're here. We are at episode number 131. Which means you can go and find the show notes if you go to www.beabrillianthuman.com/131. And on the show notes, I'll be putting all the links to the things that I'm talking about today. In particular, if you want to get hold of the book by Dr. Gary Chapman, well, of course you can Google it, but you can also go to the show notes and find a link there. Plus, I'll be laying out what the 5 languages are and some other notes to go along with it. So it's always worth having a visit. Plus, there'll be a few other links I mentioned today, and of course, those will all be there in those show notes. So here we are. Where are we in the world? Where are we in the world of time? My goodness, we're coming towards the end of May 2022. It's hard to believe. So in part, this theme of today's show was sponsored by, it's sponsored by the NPA Mastery. We'll get to that later. But really it came about because as part of the course, sometimes we get into diversionary chats, which come up as a result of people asking questions on the Mastery course. And right now we're kind of in the middle of the 2022 intakes round. And we got onto the topic of love languages, and it's a topic that I've always loved but never really talked about. And I thought, gosh, I've never talked about that on the podcast. What a perfect inspiration for this week's podcast. So here we are. So you're probably wondering, what do you mean by a partner's love language? Well, in simple terms, your partner's love language is the expression of what connects them or means love to them. So we have different meanings. We learn what love means as we grow up, I suppose, or through our interpretations of our growing up. And so different people have different ideas of what love means. And in the book that we're going to go through, the 5 love languages, Dr. Chapman has sort of broken it down into 5, which is great because there's a simplicity about it. You can think, start to identify which you resonate with for yourself, and also what your partner resonates with, which is a fantastic thing. And you see, sometimes, there's a sort of an overemphasis on unilateralism, that's what I'm trying to say, in personal growth and spirituality these days. And I kind of forget that the day-to-day experience of us humans is that while we're distinct individuals, we're also mammals. And our spirit, our very life force, requires the fundamental nourishment of connection with others, togetherness, and mutual support. So by going through the 5 love languages, we're going to sort of find out a really good way to sort of help support that connection. That I always think of connection is nourishment. As a mammal, certainly as a human, we're nourished through connection. So let's go ahead and dive right into what are the 5 love languages and what does that mean for you in your relationship? So before we go into what those 5 love languages are, it's worth saying that, firstly, I'm going to go through them and kind of give you an idea of what each one is, sort of how to communicate it and some ways to express it, some actions you can take or how to recognize it. We'll also do a little bit about the things to avoid if you recognize that your loved one has that love language. And also I'll cover a little bit about some things you can do, after conflict. You get into conflict and you understand your beloved's love language. It's good to know what can work to help with the repair. But as I go through them, bear in mind they kind of go both ways. So there's the outward expression, because if you have a particular love language, then you're going to express your love. The way you say I love you may well go through the filter of that love language. So it'll be a certain type. There's also the inward or receiving way. So if you have a different kind of love language, then what you perceive as love when someone else does something or says something is going to be impacted. So one of the ways I see this operating where you can fix a lot of issues is when there's 2 very distinct love languages, and one person is saying I love you through theirs, and that means nothing to the other person. They want a different kind of expression, so they feel loved. And it can get very confusing if you don't figure that stuff out. We're just not right for each other. No, you just need to learn the language and then just make adjustments accordingly, or at least understand that's, if you want to say I love you to someone, use their love language as a way to do it. So what are the 5 love languages according to Dr. Gary Chapman? Well, in no particular order, they are words of affirmation, physical touch, receiving gifts, quality time, and acts of service. So let's start with words of affirmation. So if words matter to you, what someone says to you matters. If you're the sort of person that thinks, why does he never say he loves me? Or why does she never say she loves me? And that feels like you're not loved. Or when someone says I love you so much and sort of compliments you and uses their words in a way that touches you, chances are words of affirmation is one of your love languages. So basically, words of affirmation is verbal compliments that express love and appreciation. So when you listen to this, you think, aha, my partner is, words of affirmation. It's the words that matter. Maybe you're someone that you've got a different love language, or that isn't part of your love language makeup particularly. You're like, well, why do they always want me to say stuff? It's a bit empty and pointless. Then it's an invitation for you to step up and to actively use the words to encourage them, to affirm things, to appreciate, to empathize, and also to listen actively, because listening is part of the whole words, the sort of very auditory modality, really, that is really important to someone who has words of affirmation as their love language. So a way that you can do this, like if your partner is got words of affirmation, one great way is to brag to others about your spouse. Oh, my man, he's amazing. Now, if your man's in earshot and hears that, he's going to be like, oh, wow, she loves me because she's talking about me in a positive sense. She must love me. Or you can write love letters. That's another good way to do it, because the written word's gonna move and touch them. Some actions you can take. You can send an unexpected note or a text, just text out of the blue. These are all word-based forms of love, or a card. And use encouragement and genuinely and often. So these are all things that speak the language of love that comes into the category of words of affirmation. Now, if you think about it, it's all about the words and what's being spoken or written, or the words are important, words matter. Then you probably want to avoid non-constructive criticism, because as much as the words hold power for love, they're going to hold power, to harm. So, or not recognizing or appreciating effort. These are things that someone who has words of affirmation, it's like the opposite. they don't love me because they criticize me all the time, or they never recognize and appreciate the effort. They never say anything about it. Now, you might well really appreciate the effort that's gone in, but you're not a wordy person, so why would you need to say it? They should know, because your love language is different. You've shown it in a different way. But if you become sensitive to the fact that that's important to your beloved, then it's worth making the effort, even though you think, words, why? What's the point? Understand that when you do that, it's going to land in your lover as they love me, which is really important. Now, if you think about what happens in the repair phase, so after conflict, so first of all, to give that lingo a bit of context, when there's conflict in a relationship, this is often missed. There's often a requirement of repair. In other words, to bring things back together, and there's different ways to do that. For someone with words of affirmation, that means talking about it. You need to speak words that build security and initiate a sincere apology. So one of the things that was spoken in the mastery group that I was talking about not saying sorry. Why do they want me to say sorry? They should know I'm sorry. This is what sparked off the whole conversation about love languages. But this is a case. There's some people that just never say sorry. It's not that they're not necessarily sorry or don't offer an apology, but it can be very confusing. If somebody is in that paradigm of where the words matter and very important, then uttering those words really matters. So that's words of affirmation. Words matter, and if you're talking in terms of expressing love, and you're not naturally perhaps inclined to that, it would make sense where you're saying I don't know why they don't get that I love them. Well, you're not saying it, and that matters to them. So make an effort and say it. So next up, we got physical touch. So this is sort of a non-sexual touch that reinforces your presence. So again, we've gone from the sort of auditory part of words of affirmation to the physicality, very physical. I need to know you there, but physicality is really important in terms of connecting through physicality. So it's non-verbal. It's the use of body language and touch to emphasize love. So if you've got physical touch as your love language, and your partner's got words of affirmation, then you might put your hand on their arm, and that's you saying I love you, or hugging them. In their mind, they're like, well, you keep hugging me, I just need to hear you love me. And vice versa. If yours is words of affirmation, you say, well, I always tell you I love you. I tell you I love you like 5 times a day. Yes, but you never hug me, says the physical touch thing. I need you to hold me. You see how the confusion goes? So, how to express it. Hugs, kisses, holding hands, showing physical affection regularly. These are the sort of things you can do. And make intimacy a thoughtful priority. For the physical touch people, sex is really important. I know it's generally non-sexual, but as an extension of that, often people with a physical touch make more. We all have, my view, healthy sex is always to do with love. But it's like there's a case of, I think for people with physical touch, it becomes even more so. So it's important to sort of make that a priority. So long hugs, gentle caressing, kissing, massages, hand holding, all of these things are a way you can demonstrate to your partner who has physical touch of, that I love you. Someone who has physical touch as a love language and gets those things will feel more loved because that's speaking their language. Now, of course, things to avoid is physical neglect, like being touch shy, or long stints without intimacy. That's where that sort of sexual part comes in. Long stints without any sex for someone who's physical touch, they're going to start feeling really unloved. And the other way around is often, say, someone who's got physical touch, maybe expressing it in that way. So they come forward with physical touch. If that's received like coldly, like, ugh, I know we're not like to go, oh, you might just go, oh, not now, the cold reception of someone offering physical touch is like rejecting their love. So, it's important to be mindful of these things. So think about, so after conflict, what do we do then for repair? Well, again, it's going to come down to it's physical touch. So if you've had a Barney and, your partner's a bit frosty, but their love language is physical touch, then you just need to hold them without saying a word. They're not looking for the words. If they've got, again, words of affirmation, tell them you're sorry. Just holding them, cuddling, is going to say more to them than the words if their love language is physical touch. So again, just with 2 examples, I'm hoping you can see that how much confusion can come around when you have different ways of looking at things. So the third love language is giving and or receiving gifts. Now, I think this one can be a little bit confused because the focus seems to be on gifts, but think about it more in terms of tangible symbols that reflect your thoughtfulness and effort. The gift-giving love language really is about, we've had the words express the love, the touch expresses the love. This is where the thought, are you thinking about me, and how can you demonstrate that you're thinking about me? That I'm in your thoughts, that you know me and you can express that through thoughts. That's good gift giving, is, they've thought about me and it matters. I matter, I'm in their mind. So the way that you communicate it is with thoughtfulness. So you make your spouse a priority in your mind and then speak from that place or act from that place. So things like giving thoughtful gifts or making thoughtful gestures are going to mean a lot to somebody who's got the receiving gifts or as their love language. That means you love them. And for people that have the love language of receiving gifts, then small things are going to matter in a big way. So things like expressing gratitude when receiving a gift, because again, just like with the physical thing, it's like goes both ways. If they give you a gift, what they're saying is, this means I love you. And if you go, whatevs, that means you're saying in their language, it's like whatevs to their love, right? So you go, thanks. But if your partner is someone who gives gifts and loves to receive gifts, and you can tell they sort of all light up when you give them gifts, if they give you a gift, take the time to think about the fact that is them saying I love you or doing those little things for you. So things you can do, for example, is make birthdays and anniversaries really special. Surprise them with their favorite treat. If they like baked Alaska, I don't know why baked Alaska come. They come home and there's baked Alaska in the thing. So look what I got you, love. Some baked. Oh my God, that's my favorite. You love me. That's how it works, So what are you going to avoid in that case? Well, don't forget those special occasions. Oh my God, that you might as well say, I don't love you anymore. And avoid that unenthusiastic gift receiving. This is an absolute sort of throwing sand in the face of your beloved if their language is that. And when it comes to repair, so if you've had a Barney with someone and their love language is receiving gifts, then just some small token of your love and an apology note. Again, remember, if we go back to, it's not like when often for those people getting them a bunch of flowers really works. Some people, let's go back to the physical touch and words of affirmation. And I think this happens a lot. There's a fight, a guy goes away, he buys a bunch of flowers from a garage, comes back, and there you go, a bunch of flowers, box of chocolates. And, the partner who maybe words of affirmation or something else is like, oh, that's supposed to do it, is it? You think you can buy me off with a bunch of flowers? Whereas someone who is into receiving gifts and that's their love, he's made the effort to go out and buy a bunch of flowers. He knows what matters to me. He knows how to say he loves me, or he knows how to say I'm sorry in this particular case afterwards. An apology note means it's been taken the time to think about it and write it out. I mean, in a way, there's a crossover there with the words of affirmation, but why it works or why it connects with someone with the giving gifts thing, it's because it's that thoughtfulness that's behind it. So the fourth love language is quality time. Now, the clue here is in the time piece. if the love language is quality time, it's quality time together. It means if you're willing to give me your time being your exclusive focus, then when you do that, you're telling me you love me. So in a way, I boil it down, it's a focused and undivided attention spent together. So like when you're together, you're with me. That kind of gets an idea of what it's about. So if you want to sort of really express to your beloved for whom you recognize quality time is important, it says I love you, it means giving uninterrupted and focused conversations. If I'm right with you, I'm having this focused conversation. It's that one-on-one time is critical for someone who has quality time as their love language. So things that you can do, or how to express it, like turn off your electronics, go for a walk together, plan date nights, start a hobby or do a hobby together. It's about creating special moments together. Take walks, do small things with your spouse. Those weekend getaways, are huge. So again, you could say, well, weekend getaway sounds like, gift giving, but there's a different reason why that matters to someone who likes quality time. Oh, you've given up your weekend and other things you could be doing to be with me. You love me, right? Which means you're going to want to avoid those distractions when you're spending time together. Let's go away for a weekend, honey. Oh my God, they love me. They love me. And then you're there and you're on your phone. Oh no. Mixed messages. And avoid those long stints without one-on-one time. So again, if you like travel away or something, for someone who appreciates that quality time, they want your one-on-one attention. You can say, oh, I'm really busy, but I'm taking out 10 minutes to pick up the phone and make sure we have a one-on-one connection. And during that time is yours. We're together. That's going to be really important, especially like in those situations where you have to be apart. Making an effort in some form to say it matters to me that we have that one-to-one connection. I want you to know that you have my undivided attention. Even in the business of life, I'm going to take time to tell you I love you by giving you my undivided attention for a spell. So in conflict, in terms of repair, this is where that connection, that one-to-one undistracted connection, there's nothing better for this than eye contact. When you make uninterrupted eye contact, so in the case of, say, it's a repair and you need to apologize, make sure you've got your eyes focused entirely on there. If you're shifty and looking around, it's not gonna cut it for someone who has quality time. An active listening. So there's like backwards and forwards. So you're paying attention. Active listening means you reflect back what you think you've heard and those kind of things with empathy. Don't interrupt them. All of these things will help someone with quality time say that they genuinely are paying attention to me. That means they love me, so I can feel safe again and trust again and love again and all those things. Very, very important. So the last of the 5 love languages, acts of service. Now, my take on acts of service is that the underlying kind of idea, so we've had like words of affirmation, that the words matter, what you say, physical touch, it's that the physical connection, it's like how you physically interact with me. Quality time is that are you paying attention to me? I want to know that you're with me, and receiving gifts, are you thinking about me? With acts of service, like the sort of sponsoring thing is, are we together? Are you taking it's like the teamwork one, really. It's like, are you thinking of us together, and how can you show that by acts? How can you demonstrate our togetherness? And importantly, in terms of that you love me, it's like, how can you help me? How can you help me in the challenges of life? Then while we're together, then I know that you love me. So in a sense, acts of service, it means that any act that eases the burden of responsibility is going to say that you love them. That means thinking about them and what they need. So, again, we can see a classic kind of sort of disparity that you see with often to be very generalizing about it, but a man will, what can I do? And the woman might be, he just wants to do something and fix me. I just want him to hold me, tell me he loves me, go out and buy some flowers. But that act of service is how he sees it. Well, if I can take the burdens, if I can do the dishes for you, then you'll know that I love you because I've done something bad. And it's like, no, what the hell use is doing the dishes, says a different love language. Now you're distracted from me again, not paying attention to me, says the quality time person. Why are you doing the dishes? Well, because I thought it would help, that would love you. So, but if your partner has acts of service, then, you can use action phrases. I'll help. They want to know you're with them, partnered with them. Let's do this, let's do this. I can do this bit. It's all good. So washing the dishes is an example where it can go horribly wrong, but if your partner is, then washing the dishes for them is great. Pamper them, pamper your spouse. Let me do that for you would be a good way to express love to someone for whom acts of service is the thing. So doing chores together, make them breakfast in bed, go out of your way to help alleviate their daily workload is the basic message here. Any way that you can do that will say I love you to your partner whose love language is acts of service. So what are you going to be avoiding with someone whose love language is acts of service? What's not going to help the situation or say the opposite of I love you? Well, making the requests of other people a higher priority than their requests. It's like having an affair. You love them more than me. You do everything for them. What about me, right? Maybe you recognize that bit. Or lacking follow through on tasks, even little ones. If you say you're going to do something, you better follow that up and actually do it. Again, for words of affirmation, people, it's important, but to a large point, as long as you're telling them, that you get it on some level, the words are going to account for a lot more. They'll be much more forgiving of that lack of follow through. Someone with acts of service is going to be very unforgiving of that lack of follow through, because that's the point. Yeah, I hear the words, and when you do it, that's the clincher. That's the I love you. That's the you really do love me because you followed through on that action. And again, big or small, doesn't matter. That's the point of the whole thing. So in terms of repairing after conflict, this is where, again, they're going to be looking for acts. So if there are behavior changes that have been requested as part of the conflict, that's where you're going to do the repair. Now, this can be a bit of a challenge because sometimes, maybe that their request you deem as unreasonable or not doable, but that's a matter of communication, really. I think in those situations, if you can find, in a sense, negotiate or communicate, what you are willing to do, and then do that would be a way to show love. So, I'm not saying that in order to show love to a partner who has service who says you need to change your entire behavior, then you've got to do it, otherwise you don't love them. That would be highly unreasonable. But if you can kind of negotiate it and say, well, this is what I can do for now, they'll probably go, okay, and then they're going to want to see you do that. That's the important piece. So I think this map is really, really useful. It breaks it down into 5 simple areas. But I did say I'd tell you why I thought there were probably more than 5. Well, it's a map, and it's a good map. It's a good start, but like all maps, it has its limitation. And so where I'm coming from with more than 5 is that we all have nuances and things that may not immediately fit the map. So what I'd encourage you to do is to look at the essence of this. Dr. Chapman's done a brilliant job of putting it into categories that you can easily get your mind around. And I've seen all sorts of transformations in my own life and in people around me from really beginning to understand the love language at that basic 5 level. But then within that, it's what you're really doing here is you're noticing what matters What matters to your beloved and how do they communicate it, and how would they like to be communicated to? And that means there be as many love languages as there are people in the world. So once you find it, and again, fantastic start is to identify which of those 5 love languages are running in your partner. But then the more you can nuance it, the more finesse you can be with the individual bits and pieces within the lifetime you spend with them and offer it back to them in that way. That's where it becomes really, really profound. Now, as I say, there's a couple of challenges that can come up within that process of doing that. So let's have a quick look at a few of those. So one of the things I see when a map like this is presented, and I honestly was on the blunt end of this when Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus came out, it is that sort of little thing goes inside, well, my partner needs to do this. In the case of the Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, back then, a long time ago now, it was like, well, you just need to speak Venusian, then everything will be all right. I'm like, well, you want to speak Martian as well? No, you speak Venusian. You got to speak Venusian. Is that divorcing of the responsibility? In this case, it might, well, they need to learn my love language. So in a sense, it's true that, we're distinct individuals, ultimately self-focused. But the thing to recognize, particularly in relation to connection, and this is where the languages come in, is that within that selfishness are those very requirements for connection with others, with togetherness and mutual support. So it's all very well expecting others to just get you, hear you, to see you. That's where you're saying they need to learn my love language. But there's an accountability of self-care that you do your part in that. So if you don't think you should have to consider your piece of the equation, how you communicate, the impact of your expressions, taking time to hear the other in a way that they feel heard, then there's that subtle sense of entitlement. It's ultimately going to backfire. In other words, if you take no personal accountability, you deny yourself that mutual connection and may end up feeling resentful, cynical, and emotionally undernourished. So here's my suggestion. Ask yourself, how can I work with my communication to support the connection and mutual understanding I desire? And that could be through the love languages, but this is a more general thing as well. Now, of course, I'm talking mutual support here. So ultimately or ideally, your beloved will do their part. But here's the thing. If you're in a Mexican standoff and going around in circles, why not take care of you and be the one to take the lead? Chances are, if you start speaking their love language, they'll light up, they'll rest, they'll blossom, they will feel loved. And there's a good chance from that you'll both begin to feel more connected, more intimate, and more alive. And through your self-empowerment, you, my beautiful listener, will feel loving, fulfilled, and wonderful in the process. And isn't that what you've been looking for all along? So the other thing which is similar or is a part of, they should learn the languages or this is how it is or they're not expressing things the way you want them to. It's interesting. I'm going to ask you to drop your agenda. Now, I'm big on agenda. If you've listened to the show for any length of time, I talk about dropping the agenda a lot, but this is relevant here. So when we're uncomfortable with someone else's expression, it's very easy to believe the notion that they ought to be different than they are. He's still taking the bins out in his acts of service when he should be telling me he loves me. Because I've told him. My love language is words of affirmation. And after all, you can see that they would be much happier if they only followed your helpful advice. And of course, it would certainly be easier for you, right? So again, I'm not saying that your helpful insights to that lovely person aren't awesome. And if they did do what's bleeding obvious to you, then perhaps they'd feel a whole lot better. But the slippery slope here is when you become attached to your way and then suddenly you have an agenda. And agendas limit possibilities. They can make you go deaf and blind to the other person, to yourself even. And, they tend to create strong undercurrents of pressure from the agenda, to have the agendas fulfilled. Now, pressure and heat is exactly what you need for an explosion. I'm just saying. And the truth is that, they, the person, they need to be where they are right now. And that might seem like a tough pill to swallow, but there's kind of an inexorable truth about it, at least for now. And like all humans, they'll tend to resist when, their natural pace is forced by an agenda. So, just trust there'll be time for suggestions or offering a perspective or for finding a way through that works for them, whether you agree with it or not, and that time might not be now. So when you drop your agenda, you'll be more available to notice that moment when it arises and stop building the pressure. Now, agendalessness is absolutely at the core of the non-personal philosophy and a huge part of why the NPA process is so powerful when it's used wisely and effectively. And it's also why, when it comes to facilitating other people, dropping the agenda, dropping the dogma, all of those things are at the core of what NPA Mastery is about, over and above teaching you super refined skills with the NPA process and the 34 NPA frames and all that lovely stuff. Ultimately, it's about stepping into the agendaless way within your practice if you're facilitating other people, or within your life if you're doing it for personal growth, which is hugely powerful, which segues us, I hope you notice, wonderfully into our sponsorship spot for the day. Take it away, NPA Mastery. This episode is sponsored by NPA Mastery. Yep, that's our very own NPA Certified Practitioner Program, where you get to up-level your one-to-one work and set yourself apart from other coaches, therapists, and facilitators as you learn NPA's unique agendaless way, which means your client sessions become effortless and resistance-free. No more draining struggles and way more energy after each session. Plus, you'll be able to add the power of NPA and over 30 NPA situation-specific frames alongside whatever modalities you already use. Take your practice to the next level. Visit www.thempaacademy.com/NPA Mastery and get registered today. I'm deeply committed to helping you up-level the work you do with your clients. And here's what the graduate NPA Mastery participants say.
Buckle up, baby, for some turbocharged personal development.
This is by far my most favorite program ever. And believe me, I've had so many programs.
It's a holding your hand all the way through, teaching, using his experience, which is amazing. I've never had case studies done that well in my other courses. That I feel that it's a real learning experience. And he wants us to up level. That's one of his things. And yeah, up leveling right from the beginning. And from the first 5 minutes. But it's really great because I'm feeling that difference in working with other people, in how I am as I am working with those people, and to make it more easy.
And I could see the result. I could see the effect of that in my work with clients immediately, and it just gets better as we go further through the program.
I've learned how much of an agenda I did have when I thought I was pretty agendaless. So the agendalessness of becoming a practitioner opens up a vastness in my own practice that I just didn't realise was available to me.
It's the first time when somebody takes my hand and takes me by my hand and takes me through real intricacies and nuances of what it is to be a practitioner, to be a therapist.
Even though it's online, and I've been on other online things and you're drained at the end in front of a computer, this is the one where I don't feel drained. Because we laugh so much, it's so much fun, and the way it's taught, I don't feel drained at the end of 8 hours on a computer, even though that's a lot of time.
It's deep and powerful and profound. The promise that Joel's making about how agendalessness will improve your effectiveness as a facilitator and as a therapist, that is not an empty promise.
I'd love you to join us, so go to www.theNPAacademy.com/NPA Mastery and get registered today. So So before we wrap this up, there's one more thing that I want to point to that really comes up when we get into the topic of communication and understanding each other and relationships and all that stuff. So one of the things about communication, empathy, understanding and connection is it takes an act of vulnerability. And especially in heated moments and on topics that are potentially or historically within a relationship triggering. So in those situations, it can seem kind of instinctive to stay inside your fortress walls. But all you can see there is your own worldview, and inevitably it's a position of defense. It's literally a place you've built specifically so they can't get to you. It's the antithesis of connection. So if you truly want to experience empathy, understanding and connection, you'll need to have the courage to step outside your fortress, to leave your defenses behind and venture vulnerably into their world. Which means be curious, be open, and be ready to feel what's happening outside your walls. It's a risk, of course, but isn't life beyond the stuff and the achievements, about connection? So if you're unwilling to roll the dice for that, then the greater risk is you'll miss the true gift of this human life. Now, of course, you might really want to step outside your fortress, but find it incredibly hard. Perhaps you even realize you want it and need it, and still. If that's the case, if you're going, easy said than done, Joel, but I've tried and I can't, then you'll be needing to get some help. Now, there's loads of beautiful people that can help you. Certainly, I can help you. If you want to check out my sessions, you can go to joelyoungmpa.com/sessions and take a look there. Or, go on to the NPA Academy and you'll find a link there to our current certified NPA practitioners, all of whom I stand behind and will do great work with you, or anyone else. But the point is, get help. It's worth the challenge. It's worth rising to the challenge of overcoming that, because whether you're opening the conversation about love languages with your beloved, or dropping the agenda, all of these things that I've talked about today, it is an act of vulnerability. So if you find that you can't quite get outside your walls, get some help, my friend. You will not regret it. That's it for today. Hope you've enjoyed this show. Do let me know. You can get in touch via all the usual social media platforms. Normally I'm at Joel Young MPA. If you're on YouTube, leave me a comment. All that wonderful stuff. Make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you are, and I will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this show, I'd love you to do me a solid and tell someone about it. They can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, and most other podcast platforms. Plus, if you visit the website www.BABrillianthuman.com, you can share the show notes to social media and make my day. Also, make sure you hit that follow button, and if you haven't yet downloaded the NPA process sheet, head on over to joelyoungmpa.com and get your free copy today. Big love, and see you next time.